agus fáilte rivanara machara anara an rabbit agus garmagach as an táver seo hógáil hon on Tarar the Dakish, and can I endorse obviously the remarks of my colleague Senator Dooley about the importance of designating family carers as key workers, and I know, Minister, you're very passionate about doing that as well. I want to raise the issue around higher education funding, and the success in this country, the economic success, indeed many of the social developments, has been built on the fact that we have a highly educated citizenry and workforce. And if we look at some of the statistics, and I mean other countries are almost jealous about it, where a majority of those in their 20s and 30s in this country are graduates. We're looking at this year around 50,000 new entrants going into our higher education institutions. There'll be over 70,000 graduates at different levels coming out. We now have nearly 200,000 people studying at undergraduate level in this country, 45,000 postgrads. I mean, those are, statistics to be celebrated. But the problem has been about the question of chronic underfunding. And as we continue to expand the system and provide more opportunities, and because of the technological changes we're going to be facing over the next decade, there's going to be a greater demand for us all to upskill and reskill. We have to have a higher education system that's fit for purpose and that has adequate levels of funding. And I don't think anybody should be in any doubt about the challenge of some of those costs. Part of the problem has been is even though we've continued to see that dramatic increase in numbers, as you know, over the last decade, the level of public funding until recently has continued to be cut. Now we're finally this year starting to see additional investment in the area. I asked today about the full economic cost, about how much it costs in every case, so that we get an idea of the scale. My understanding is the estimate will probably be something around 8,000 to 10,000. We need to provide that kind of sum of money every year to ensure that we can provide more of the quality graduates for which this country is well known. And we need to have the capital and research investment, particularly in the emerging technological university sector. 5 years ago this month, the Cassell's report was published. And in many ways, the Cassell's report didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. But the problem has been is that the can around higher education funding has continued to be kicked down the road since that period. It was sent to an Oireachtas committee, there were reviews to Europe, there were various reports. None of them are going to tell us anything different. I mean, Cassell's outlined that there were 3 possible models, as you know, to funding our higher education system. Personally, I favour, for the most part, a publicly funded system that we as a state should invest. We should invest in our future, because education is where it matters. And I think one of the potentially big achievements of this government, and it's something, and I will say it was a Fianna Fáil input into the programme for government, was the creation of the Department of Further Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. That's not just an administrative department. That has to drive Ireland's economic and social development and our recovery coming out of this COVID period. But that can only be done if we have a properly funded system. And I don't think it's acceptable, and I know Minister Harris has said the time for reports is over. I think we need to make a decision now. We need to look at ensuring that we have a proper, publicly funded higher education system, and that we can ensure that it is fit for purpose to be able to meet the technological changes that we're going to face over the next decade. Garmavich.
Minister. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Senator Byrne, for raising this. And I'm taking this on behalf of Minister Niall Collins, Minister for State for Further Education and Skills. And I will start out of text by saying it is wonderful that we do have this department, and I do think it puts a real strong emphasis on higher education as a standalone, where you have a senior minister and a minister of state working with a team within it. So the full cost of higher education place can vary depending on a variety of factors, including the type of course and the specific arrangements for course delivery. At present, there is some differentiation in the cost approach within the sector. The university sector collects full economic costing data. The IoT and the TU sector collects unit cost data, which involves a different methodology to full economic costing. Details provided by the Higher Education Authority give a sample of both the costs in various disciplines. For instance, laboratory-based Undergraduate disciplines such as science or engineering will have a greater cost, circa 10 or 11,000 per student, than a non-lab discipline such as arts or business course, which costs in the region of 7,000 per student. Taking all disciplines into account, undergraduate costs for a student would currently be in the region between 9 or 10,000, and I think that's exactly what you had said there, Senator. The latest university FEC data 2016-2017 indicates that the average cost for a laboratory-based postgrad thought student is circa 15,000 per student per year, while the average cost for a non-laboratory postgrad thought student is in the region of 12,000 per student per year. An average cost for a laboratory-based postgrad research student is approximately 18,000 per year, and an average cost for a non-laboratory postgrad research student is circa 21,000 per student per year. The Department is very much aware of the need to understand the cost of higher education course provision. In 2016, the HEA appointed an independent expert panel to review the current allocation model for funding higher education and to make recommendations on the most appropriate funding model for the future. The completed review recommends reform for the Higher Education Authority funding distribution model. A key recommendation from the RFAM report is the development of a costing model applied consistently across higher education institutes. At present, there is some differentiation in the costing approach as between the universities and the Technological University Institute's technology. Deloitte was appointed by the HEA in 2019 to undertake a scoping exercise on an appropriate model. In 2021, the HEA, working with DESH and DEEPR, the IUA and the THEA, will commence development on a conceptual framework on the journey towards adoption of a universal costing system applying across the entire higher education sector. In relation to the implementation of the Castles report, the expert group investing in National Ambition, a strategy for funding higher education 2016, that the higher education makes a hugely positive contribution to the development of individuals, employers, society and the state. The report concluded that the approach to funding was unsustainable and that sustainable increases in investment in higher education must be made to ensure that the sector can remain viable and provide the capacity to meet the major increases in students' demand projected up to 2030. The expert group report has opened up an important debate in Ireland on how our third-level education system should be funded, and the report proposed three major findings: a predominantly state-funded system, an increased state funding with continuing student fees, and thirdly, increased state funding with deferred payment of fees through the income contingent loans. Can I just finish the last line, if you don't mind? The development of a sustainable funding model for higher education is essential in light of the centrality of higher education to our progress as a country. The future development of higher education as an inclusive society and an acknowledged economy against the backdrop of the rapid technology changes which you reference will be critical development dependent on the quality of our graduates. And I'll say the rest in my concluding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister.
I think we all know how important higher education is. My difficulty has been, and I do accept, the government has made a good start in terms of the new department and increased public funding that's there. But it talks about the scale of the ambition, but we've got to be able to put the resources behind that. And I really just plead, Minister, and to take it back to Minister Collins and Minister Harris, that we finally have to address this funding question. I mean, we've had, we can have lots more reports. They're all going to tell us the exact same thing. The sector is responding as effectively as it can. There's very little more that can be trimmed back in the sector. But if we're going to continue to provide the opportunities, if we're going to continue to expand and also to meet those technological challenges that we're facing, then we really have to address that funding question. And I don't think the Cassell's report can be left to be kicked down the road any further.
Thank you, Chair. The last point I was going to make was in relation to the Department is working closely with the European Commission and independently appointed consultants on that. but also the completion of this work will allow for an informed debate on the appropriate policy approach to future planning and funding of the higher and further education provision, which is a fundamental of Irish economic and sustainability. So I really do think the universal costing system and the report, the working that's going on it, is actually going to lay the foundation as to exactly how we can fund it and fund it fairly and equitable across universities and the Technology Institute. And I think, to be fair to the two ministers, that's what the department is focusing at the moment, because if we don't invest, it won't work at all. It's a broken system. Thank you.